The clock is ticking, like a time bomb, I might add. We are now 97 days away from Taxmageddon. It adds up to the largest tax rate increase in U.S. history. $494 billion in new taxes set to hit at the beginning of the next year, with the Bush tax rates expiring and some of the Obamacare taxes kicking in. It does not get much better for the start of 2013. With the looming fiscal cliff triggering automatic defense spending cuts, the move guts $55 billion from the defense budget and will likely lead to massive job losses while hurting our military strength. Now, Obama doesn't want any talk of the job loss pink slips going out before November's election like they're supposed to, according to federal law. So he's trying to bend the rules, and it's not like he hasn't done this before. At the same time, the Fed is pumping money into the economy and devaluing the currency with another round of quantitative easing. That sounds so cute, doesn't it? Unlike Bernanke's other unsuccessful attempts to prop up the economy, this round doesn't have an end date and is tied directly to lowering unemployment. What it boils down to is the weakest economic recovery since the Great Depression, and massive tax increases and more government involvement in the economy. It's a socialist recipe for disaster. Joining me from Arizona is Congressman David Schweikart. How you doing, sir?
Very well, Andrew.
One thing that drives me absolutely nuts, and some Republicans fall in this trap too, is calling it the Bush tax cuts. There's only tax rates. The House either raises or lowers taxes. The Senate provides advice and consent on or adds amendments to bills. But we keep hearing the Bush tax cuts, tax cuts, tax cuts. They're tax rates, especially if they've been in place for over a decade. There's no such thing as a tax cut at that point. And what they're afraid to say is Obama tax rate increases. Am I right?
Yeah, and let's face it. What was it? A year ago, it was President Obama that said he would accept the extension of these tax rates. And that seems to drive the left absolutely nuts when you remind them of that.
I don't know when, along the way, the Clinton-era tax rates became the watermark or standard by which all other tax rates since would be judged. That I find fascinating, don't you?
Oh, yeah, and they live in a bit of a mathematical fantasy world. One of the things we show at a lot of our budget town halls is we put up this chart that shows what income brackets pay what percentage of the federal income tax. And the fact of the matter is that top 10% of income earners today pay substantially more of the federal income tax than they did back during the Clinton years. And it's almost like the left just refuses to look at the math and say, they live in this fantasy. They somehow think that one end of the income spectrum is getting away with something, and they're not.
You know, the CBO came out and said not too long ago that the tech boom had nothing to do with Clinton-era policies or Republican policies, for that matter, to be fair. And despite what Al Gore says, the government didn't invent what we would do with the Internet. Now here's the weird thing. When you hear this class warfare rhetoric laced into tax increases, and the president's out there, tax cuts, tax cuts, tax cuts to make your love life better, it amazes me that very few people do not seem to understand that when you promise to cut taxes for the middle class to try to make them feel as if they're getting a whole bunch of stuff for free from government, but you're engaged in a war on coal or a war on oil, that when those coal companies either lay off or raise the prices of their product, the oil companies raise the prices of their product, that in the end, I guarantee you, if middle-class Americans, if we're going to call them middle-class Americans, actually took all the receipts from the gasoline that they bought and juxtaposed it to the tax cut that they got, they'd find they were behind after spending all that money in increased gas prices.
Oh, yeah. Look, Andrew, you're speaking of the game of this administration where, hold up a little shiny object and then take it out of your other pocket. Look, the reality of it, what we're facing, is not only the tax-ageddon, as you hear, with the tax rates, but there's dozens of other things going on. You spoke of the sequestration. There's going to be changes in Medicare. Do you realize on, January 1st, if you're a doctor and you see a Medicare patient, you're taking a 30.4% cut, meaning January 2nd, you don't see Medicare patients anymore. There's dozens and dozens of major policy that come crashing down on us over the next few months. And you see this president just trying to focus on class warfare.
You know, what's funny is I don't mean to make fun of people with high academic pedigrees, but we've pointed out on this program several times with regard to people like Christina Romer. They have these academic models that they build in a laboratory environment or a classroom or wherever they do it, and they say things like, well, if we invest this much of the taxpayers' money in this, it'll grow the economy this much. But they always ignore the X factors. They always ignore how the market's going to respond, how people's spending habits are going to respond. You can't just have government action without ramifications. And it's almost as if time after time after time that they propose these academic models and they fail, they keep saying to themselves, or saying to us at least, one more time we'll get this right, one more policy, one more quick fix, one more quantitative easing, and it's all going to work out. And it never does.
Well, Andrew, you're speaking of the arrogance of the left. And if you and I want to go back 60-some years ago, remember when Hayek basically wrote his thesis saying, if you can't know all knowledge, you can't know everything that's happening in the world around you, how can you predict how that world is going to react? And we've seen it time after time after time. The left believes they can manipulate and control individuals. The right basically believes individuals will make rational choices if they're left alone and given freedom.
You know, I know you're in Arizona, and as politically, from a local level, you probably don't have much of a dog in the fight in the war on coal. You know, I would think they would want to protect Joe Manchin a little bit. Maybe I'm wrong. But they seem to be at war with Appalachia and by proxy, our energy prices. I mean, the president came out and said during the last campaign that his policies were going to increase power utility and rates. That didn't seem to scare anybody. But here it is. We are seeing an obvious war on coal. Joe Biden said there's no such thing as clean coal. And let me add this in. What I think is funny about their obsession with green technology, they've decided that this, that, or the other thing is the technology of the future, and now they're trying to use government to manipulate the market and make it a self-fulfilling prophecy. We've never heard anything about grants for researching clean coal or advanced catalytic converter technology. They decided what it's going to be, and they're now using government to force us into it.
Yeah, I want to give you one other side way to look at this. It's about the money. If you start to look at who finances the left, you know, trial lawyers, unions, environmental groups. I actually had an experience several months ago where a group of environmental activists were in my office pounding on coal, pounding on these other things, demanding that we give more subsidies to solar and other green energies. And one of the gentlemen gave me his card. There's this amazing thing called Google. I looked him up. He runs a hedge fund with almost $1 billion invested in green energy. For him, this wasn't about saving the environment. For him, this was about making money. And, you know, somewhere out there, the public needs to understand we're getting scammed by the left.